Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Bhushan. In this video and in the next couple of videos, we're going to discuss about writing the JUnit test cases for the Spring Boot application. If you are following my YouTube channel for quite some time, then you will already find a video on my YouTube channel that is writing the JUnit test cases for the Spring Boot application. And in that video, I explained that how you can write the JUnit test cases for the repository layer. We haven't discussed about how we can write the JUnit test cases for the other layers, such as the service layer as well as the controller layer. We have not discussed about how we can perform the end-to-end testing or the integration testing. But in this crash course, we will learn everything about writing the JUnit test cases for the Spring Boot application. We will perform the integration testing and the end-to-end testing, and also we will learn how we can use the Mockito along with JUnit. So let's get started. Now you can enroll to my Udemy premium course, which is Build Production Ready REST API in Spring Boot and Data JPA. We're going to build the expense tracker API. You will learn a whole lot of things. Make sure to check out this course and also use this coupon code before enrolling to this course. And also you can enroll to the another course, which is building the Spring Boot application with Thymeleaf. We're going to create a web application which is Expense Manager, and you will learn a whole lot of things. Also, you can use this coupon code for this course as well. Now back to the video. I'm going to divide this crash course into 3 parts. In every single part, we're going to discuss about writing the test cases for one of the layers. In this video and in this part, we will be discussing about writing the JUnit test cases for the repository layer. In the subsequent part, we're going to discuss about writing the test cases for the other layers as well. Let's begin. I'm inside the STS IDE. I will be using this STS IDE throughout this course. You can also use IntelliJ IDEA or Eclipse IDE if you are comfortable with that. In interest of time, I have already created the Spring Boot application. If you open this Spring Boot application, inside the source main Java, we have 3 packages: the default package or the base package, and the model package, and the repository package. And if you open the pom.xml, I have added the few dependencies. I have added the data JPA dependency and the H2 dependency and the Lombok dependency. And this Spring Boot starter test dependency, which is defaultly added by the Spring initializer. And we need this dependency to write the JUnit test cases. And now if you open the model package, we have the model class, which is movie. And if you open this, I have created a private fields: ID, name, genre, and release date. And we have added the Lombok annotations, and also we have added the JPA annotations. We have mapped this entity to the table tbl_movies. We have marked the ID field as a primary key type using the ID annotation, and we have added the auto increment ID for using the @generated value annotation. And if you open the repository package, we have the movie repository. If you open this, we have it is a interface, and we have extended this interface with the JPA repository. We are going to write JUnit test cases for this movie repository. So what we are going to test in this movie repository? So if you observe this movie repository is extends with the JPA repository, and JPA repository has provided a bunch of predefined methods to perform the database operations like save, find by ID, delete by ID, delete, and find all. We are going to test all those methods. And where we are going to write the JUnit test cases, and if you open the source test Java, we are going to keep all our JUnit test cases inside this folder. If you open this, you will see a package similar to what we have inside this source main Java. And we are going to create a same package structure inside this as well. We are going to create a package for this repository because we are going to test the movie repository. So let's go ahead and create the package inside this. Right click and choose package. Let's call this repository. And inside this, we are going to create a JUnit class. We can either create the JUnit class or even we can create the Java class. So right click on this, create a new class. Let's call this movie repository test, click finish. Now, in order to test the test cases, in order to write the Java unit test cases, we are going to add a special annotation. If you open the project explorer and if you open this default package, we have this default test class. If you open this, you can see there is an annotation called @Spring Boot test annotation. We can use this annotation inside this movie repository test annotation. We can add this annotation here and we can write the unit test cases. But instead of using this annotation, we are going to use one more annotation, that is @data test annotation. So there are some benefits using that annotation. We can read few lines about the data test annotation inside the docs. So let's go to the browser and search for data test and crack open the first link, which is docs.spring.io. And if you open this, I highly recommend you to read few lines about the data test on this link. It has a great documentation. I'm going to highlight few of the things. That is, first of all, this annotation focuses only on the JPA components, which is it is going to focus on the entities and repositories. That's why we are going to use this data test annotation. And also one more advantage is using this annotation, it will disable the full auto configuration. Instead, apply only the configuration that are relevant to the JPA test. So we can only enable the configuration that are required for the JPA test instead of enabling the entire auto configuration. So that's why we are going to use this data test annotation. And also you can read it uses the embedded in-memory database, so we don't have to rely on the real databases such as MySQL, Oracle or PostgreSQL database. That's why we have added the H2 dependency inside our pom.xml. We are going to test the JUnit test cases. We are going to save the data into the database for the in-memory database. We are not going to use the real database to test the repository layer. And also we can enable the logging by you can also enable the logging using this property. We can add this property inside our property file and we can enable this, so we can see the logs inside the console. That's exactly what we're going to do. So let's copy this property and go to the STS and open the application.properties and add this property and set this to true. Now let's save this. Okay, now go to the movie repository test JUnit class, and inside this we are going to add the data test annotation. I hope you understand why we are going to use this data test annotation. This is from the dependency which we have added, which is Spring Boot starter test dependency. Inside this we will start writing the JUnit test cases. In order to test the movie repository, first of all we need to auto-wire this movie repository. So at the top, create a private field, private movie repository. Let's call this movie repository, and we can add the auto-wired annotation. Next, we will start writing the JUnit test cases. JUnit test cases are nothing but the Java methods, but it has an annotation called test annotation. So first of all, I'm going to close some of these files. We don't need these files. So let's close this. I'm going to expand this. Let's write the first JUnit test case. Void. I'm going to call this save. You can give any name you want. Like I said, every test case has an annotation called @test. So we will add this annotation. Now this method becomes the JUnit test case. Every JUnit test case is divided into three parts, that is arrange, act, assert. So arrange, which is nothing but setting up the data that are required for this JUnit test case, and act, which is nothing but calling a method or unit that is being tested, and assert, which is nothing but verifying the data whether the expected result is correct or not. So for every JUnit test case is divided into three parts, that is arrange, act, assert. we will also call it as AAA. Okay, so now let's set up the data for this test case. So this test case is all about testing whether the given movie object is stored in the database or not. So in order to save the movie object to the database, the requirement is the data that are required for that is movie object. So let's create the movie object, movie. I'm going to call this avatar movie, new movie, and now let's initialize some values. We can provide the values to the fields, that is avatar movie dot set name. We're going to set the movie name, which is avatar movie dot set genre. We're going to set the genre. This is an action movie, and we're going to set the release date, the movie release date. Set release date. I don't know when exactly it has been released, so local date. We're going to make use of the method of, and we will provide the year. Let's say it has been released in the year 2000, and month in the month of April, and let's say 22. Now we have set up the data that are required for this test case. Next, the act, which is nothing but the method or the unit that is being tested. So we want to test the save method. So let's make use of the movie repository dot save, and to this we're going to pass the object, which is avatar movie, and this is going to give us the saved movie object. So let's call this movie. I'm going to call this new movie. Okay, and the last part is assertion. We have to verify whether the result is correct or not, whether the behavior is correct or not. So for that we're going to make use of the assertions. So assert, there are so many methods are available inside the assertions. We're going to make use of the assertions, assert that we can use, or even we can use assert not null. We're going to make use of the assert not null, and this new movie object should not be null after we saved into the database. This new movie object should not be null. So that is what we are going to verify it. And also we can use assert that, and we can also make use of this new movie dot get ID. Once we stored into the database, this new movie object contains the ID. The ID should not be null. So we can make use of the method is not equal to null. Here we have not providing the ID. So here, before saving it to the database, the movie object contains the ID, it will be null, and after it is stored into the database, the ID will be initialized, ID will be 1 by default, and we are going to assert that the movie ID should not be equal to null. With this change, save the file. Now we want to test the JUnit test case. So if you want to test the JUnit test case, you can just click on this method and select this method and choose run as and choose JUnit test. We can see the SQL logs. You can see the table has been created, inserted the values to the table, and if you click on this icon, you will see the green bar, which means our test case has been passed. Okay, if you see the red bar, then our test case has been failed, but our test case has been passed because we have expected behavior is working as expected. So let's recap one more time what we have done. We have auto-wired the movie repository at the top, and we have created the JUnit test case, which is saved, and we have added the test annotation, and we understand that every JUnit test case is divided into 3 parts, that is arrange, act, and assert. And in the arrange part, we are going to set up the data that are required for our test case. We have created the movie object, and we have initialized the values, that is movie name, genre, and release date. In the act part, we have called the method that is being tested. we want to test the save method, we have called that method and we have stored the movie object into the database. And in the last part, we have verify whether the expected behavior is correct or not. We have took the new movie object and we have checked that new movie object should not be null, and also we have checked that new movie object ID should not be equal to null. We can also provide a custom names to these test cases. For example, if you open this console, you will see right now the test case method name is save, and if you want to change this, we can use that. We can also change that by adding the annotation, that is display name annotation. So let's add the display name annotation, and we can provide the custom name. We can also provide the custom names in sentences also. Let's say, for example, it should save the movie to the database. Now let's save this, and if you run the test case, instead of the save, you will see this custom name. Let's open this, and you can see it should save the movie to the database. So we can also provide the custom names to these test cases using the display name annotation. This display name annotation is not only applicable to these test cases, we can also provide it to the class as well. Now let's write one more JUnit test case for find all method. So we know that JPA repository provide one more method, that is find all, which is used to retrieve the data from the database. So let's write a JUnit test case for that as well. Create a method void. I'm going to call this get all movies. Like I said, you can give any name you want. We can add the test annotation. Also, let's add the display name annotation and provide a custom name, that is it should return the movies. Inside this, like I said, every test case is divided into 3 parts, which is arrange, act and assert. Arrange, which is nothing but setting up the data that are required for our test cases. So what I'll do is I'm going to copy this movie object, copy this, and also I'm going to copy this as well, which is calling the save method. And similarly, I'm going to copy one more time and paste it. We are going to store the 2 movies to the database. Let's change this to Titanic movie and copy this and change all these reference variables. And I'm going to change this to, or what I'll do is we don't need this reference variable because we are not going to dealing with this reference variables after saving the movies to the database. We don't need this. And I'll change this as well. Okay. Also we need to change this as well. Titanic, it's a romantic movie, so genre, let's set this to romance. And let's say assume that it has been released in the year 2002. I'm sure it is not released in the 2002. Let's say 1999, and maybe May, let's say 20. This is not the exact release date, so just assume that. Once we have stored into these movies to the database, what we have to do is we have to go to the next part, that is act, which is the method that is being called, that is the method that we wanted to test, that is find all. So let's make use of the movie repository dot find all. This is going to return the list of movies. Let's call this list. Let's import the list from the util package. Next, the last part is we have to verify whether the expected behavior is correct or not. Since we have stored these 2 movies into the database, this list should contains 2 records. The list size should be 2. So let's verify that. First of all, let's make use of the assert not null. We can use assert not null. We can check the list. The list should not be null. And next, similar to this not null, we can also use assert that. So assert that, let's pass this list, and we can call the is not null method. We can call is not null method. These both are same. Here we are using this assert not null, but here we are using the assert that, and then we are calling the is not null method. Both are same. You can use either of the options. And last, we need to check the size of the list. So assert equals, and you can see there are a bunch of overloaded methods are available, but you can see the first parameter is the expected and the second parameter is the actual one. So the expected, what we are expecting, the size is 2, and the actual is list.size, and save this. Alright, so now we have returned the JUnit test case for getting the list of movies from the database. So let me change this to movies list with size of 2. So it should return the movies list with a size of 2. So let's save this. We can test the JUnit test case. So if you want to test this particular JUnit test case, just select the method, right click, choose run as, choose JUnit test. We should see the logs inside the console. You can see the 2 insert statements and the select query. And if you crack open this console, you will see the green bar, and you will see our test case has been passed, and you can see the custom message or the custom name, that is it should return the movies list with size of 2. If you want to fail this test case, let's say change this to 1 and save this. Now select this and choose run as JUnit test. Our test case should fail. You can see the green bar. You can see the message that is expected 1, but it was returning 2. So this is how we can write the JUnit test cases. You can explore more about these assertions method. There are a bunch of assertion methods available. We are using some of the assertion methods, that is assert not null, assert that, is not null, and assert equals. And throughout this course, we will be using bunch of assertion methods as well. Next, let's write a JUnit test case for find by ID method. So let's create a method void. I'm going to call this get movie by ID. Add the annotation, that is test. Inside this, we're going to do the same thing: arrange, act, and assert. So first we need to set up the data that are required for this test case. So what I'll do is I'm going to copy one of this movie object and paste it. Next, once we store the movies into the database, next we have to call a method that is being tested, that is find by ID. So movie repository dot find by ID, and we are going to pass the ID which we want to test. So we are going to pass this avatar movie dot get ID, and on this we are going to call the get method. This will return the movie object. So movie, let's call this existing movie, and the last part is we have to assert that, we have to verify whether the expected behavior is correct or not. First of all, let's use assert not null. We can use existing movie. We can pass the existing movie. We are going to check whether this existing movie should not be null. Next, even if you don't add this, that is fine, because we are calling this get method, and if it is a null, it will actually throw the exception. But for the understanding purpose, I'm adding assert not null. We are going to check whether this existing movie should not be null. Next, we are going to check the genre, whether the genre is equal or not. Assert equals. We are going to check the expected is action. The genre is action movie. and we're going to check the existing movie dot get genre. We can also check for the release date as well. Assert that. Let's pass the avatar, not the avatar movie, which is, yeah, I think it's avatar movie dot get release date. We're going to check the avatar movie get release date is before we're going to pass the date, that is local date dot off, which is 2000, and month, which is April, and 23. We are checking whether this date is before this date or not, and the release date is before this 2000 and April 23, whether this release date is before this date or not. I know I hope you already know about this, what is before will do. So let's save this. Now let's test the JUnit test case. So select this and right click, choose run as, click on this JUnit test. We can see the logs inside the console and our test case should pass. If you click on this, you can see the green bar and get movies by ID. Okay, we forgot to add the display name annotation. Let's provide a custom name. It is not a mandatory, but I usually add for all the JUnit test cases. Display name, provide the custom name, that is it should return the movie by its ID. Save this, select the JUnit test case, choose run as, JUnit test. We should see the green bar with the custom name. Click on this, you can see it should return the movie by its ID. We are checking the genre as well as the release date. Next, let's write a JUnit test case for updating the movie. Let's create a method void update movie. Let's add the test annotation, and inside this, first we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. I'm going to copy this and I'll paste it in the down. Next, we have to perform the act, which is nothing but we have to call a method that is being tested. First of all, okay, before that, we also need to set up the data. That is, we have to, once we have stored into this database, we have to get the data as well. So let's make use of the movie repository dot find by ID, and we can pass this avatar movie dot get ID. Let's call the get method. This is going to give us the existing movie. Let's call this existing movie. Now we have set up the data that are required for our test case. Next, we need to call a method that is being tested. Before that, we have to update the data. So we have to update this existing movie dot set genre. We're going to set the genre to romance, and also we're going to set the movie name to Titanic. Existing movie dot, okay, I think we can also set multiple fields as well, but to keep it simple, so let's only set the genre. I'm going to set this to romance, but for the avatar movie, romance doesn't suit. Let's change this to fantasy. Definitely Avatar is not a romance movie. The genre is not a romance, it's actually a fantasy, you can say. So let's set the genre to fantasy, and now we need to save this to the database. So movie repository dot save, and let's set this to, we can pass the existing movie, and this is going to give us the new movie. So movie, let's call this new movie. Now the last part is we have to verify whether the expected behavior is correct or not. What we are going to do is we are going to check this new movie genre is fantasy or not. So assert equals the expected is fantasy, and the actual is new movie dot get genre. Also we're going to check, we are going to assert that whether the movie name is Avatar or not, because we have not updated it. We have to verify whether only the genre has been updated or rest of all the fields are also updated. We have to verify that. So assert equals the expected is Avatar and the actual is new movie dot get name. Let's save this. So now we have, in the initial, we have set up the data, we have created the movie object, we have stored into the database, and we have retrieved the existing movie object, and then we have updated the values. We have changed the genre to fantasy, and then we have stored into the database. Now our movie has been updated. Next we are going to assert that whether the genre is correct or not. We are going to verify whether the genre is fantasy or not, and also we are going to verify that the movie name is Avatar or not. With this, let's save the file and let's add the display name annotation. We can provide the custom name to the test case. It should update the movie. It should update the movie with genre fantasy. You can give any name you want. I'm going to keep it simple. So let's save this. It should update the movie with the genre fantasy. So select the JUnit test case, right click, choose run as JUnit test. We should see the logs inside the console. We can see the insert table, insert statement. Before that, you can see the table movies and the insert query. And now, okay, our test case is failing. Okay, this is strange. Okay, I think it's type mismatch, fantasy, okay, this is actually fantasy. I know it is a typo error. So let's save this. And now if you run the test case again, that is why I confused that I did not see the console logs inside the console. Okay, now you can see that insert statement, and if you look at this, we should see the green bar, and also you can see that it should update the movie with the genre fantasy. So our test case is running successfully. If you see the red bar, then something wrong with your test case. As far as we have seen the green bar and our test case is working as expected, the expected behavior is correct. Next, let's write a JUnit test case for deleting the movie. Let's create a method void. I'm going to call this delete movie. Let's add the annotation test. Inside this, first we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. I'm going to copy these two movies. We're going to store the two movies into the database. So let's store this. And also what I'll do is I'm going to store the ID inside a variable long ID is equal to avatar movie.getId. And once we set up the data, what I'll do is I'm going to call the method that is being tested, which is delete movie repository dot delete, and to this delete we are going to pass the movie object. We're going to delete one of the movie object, that is avatar movie. So let's pass the avatar movie. Once we have deleted the movie, this avatar movie inside the database, our list size, our database should contain only one entry. So what I'll do is I'm going to call the method that is movie repository dot find all. This is going to return the list of movies. Let's call this list. Now we can verify the list of the movies that are present inside the database. We can assert that assert equals the expected is 1 and the actual is list dot size. Next we can also we can verify that we're going to check the existing movie is present or not. So we can make use of this ID. We can make use of the ID movie repository dot find by ID. Let's pass the ID, and this is going to return the optional of movie. Let's call this existing movie. Let's import the optional from the util package. Now we can pass this to the assert that existing movie is empty. We can verify, because once we have deleted this avatar movie, when we this will be deleted from the database, and now when we make the find by ID with this avatar ID, this should be an empty. So that is why we are verifying that this existing movie should be empty. So let's save this and let's add the display name annotation. It should delete the existing movie. So let's save this and now select the JUnit test case, choose run as JUnit test. We should see the logs inside the console. You can see the delete statement and the select query, and now if you click on this, you should see the green bar. Our test case should be passed, and you can see it should delete the existing movie. Next, let's write a JUnit test case for JPA finder methods. So inside the movie repository, let's create a new finder method or the query method. We're going to create a query method for the genre. So find by, and you can see we have the genre. So let's choose genre, and this is going to take the genre as a parameter, which is of type string, and this is going to return the list of movies. So let's import the list, and I believe that you already aware of creating the finder methods or query methods using the JPA repositories. In case if you are new to creating the finder methods or query methods, I highly recommend you to check out my course. The link will be given in the description section of this video. Now we have this finder method. Now let's write a JUnit test case for this finder method. Let's go to this movie repository test and create a method void get movies by genre. Let's add the annotation test, and inside this, first we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. I'm going to take these two movie objects and paste it. Let me create some white space, and we don't need this ID, so let's get rid of this. And next we need to call a method that is being tested. So let's make use of the movie repository dot find by genre, and we can pass the genre. Let's say romance. We have stored two records into the database. The one is action genre and the romance genre. So when we find by genre, when we have done this, we should get a single movie object or a single record. This is going to return list of movies with the genre romance. So let's call this list. Now we have to verify whether the expected behavior is correct or not. We have to assert that. So first of all, we're going to check assert not null. Let's pass the list, and next we're going to check the list size. Assert that list dot size is equal to 1. Save this. Let's quickly add the custom name to this test case. It should return the movies list with genre romance. So let's save this. Select the JUnit test case, right click, choose run as JUnit test. So let's save this. We should see the SQL logs inside this console. You can see the two insert statements and the select query. And if you look at this, we should see the green bar. We can see it should return the movies list with genre romance. So this is how we can write the JUnit test cases for the custom methods or the query methods, or also called as finder methods. Alright, till now we are running the JUnit test cases individually. Now let's go ahead and run all these test cases. So in order to run all these test cases, you can just right click on this file and choose run as and choose JUnit test. All our test cases should be passed. We should see the green bar. And now if you go to this, you should see the green bar, and you can see all the test cases has been passed. The first one is it should delete the existing movie, it should return the movies list with a size of 2, it should update the movies with genre fantasy. You can see all the test cases has been passed. We have written 6 JUnit test cases, and all these 6 JUnit test cases has been passed. One thing you should also notice that the order of these test cases is not one after the other, like it is executing randomly. It is not executing in the order which we have written. It is running the JUnit test cases in random. Later we are going to see how we can test these test cases in order wise, like in order what we have written. For now it is testing the test cases randomly. Alright, now if you look at one thing, in every test cases what we are doing is we are setting up the data. But we are setting up the data, the common code or the repeated code that we are doing it inside the every test cases. We are setting up the same code in every test cases. So what we can do is we can refactor this. The JUnit has provided a lifecycle methods. We can make use of the lifecycle methods to refactor this code. Inside the lifecycle method, we can set up the common data that required for all these test cases. So that's exactly what we are going to do. In case if you don't know the lifecycle methods that are provided by JUnit, I highly recommend you to check out my video. I have created a separate video on that. The link will be given in the description section of this video. So at the top, we're going to create a method void init. You can give any name you want, but we are going to use the annotation that is before each annotation. So as the name suggests, this method will be called before executing the each and every JUnit test case. So inside this, we can easily set up the data so that before running every JUnit test case, this init method will be executed and we can set up the data. So what I'll do is, outside of this, we are going to create a movie object, because for every test cases we are creating the movie object. So let's create a movie objects. We're going to create a reference variables, private avatar movie. So let's copy this avatar movie. Before that, let's add movie, avatar movie, private movie, Titanic movie. Now we have these two private variables or the reference variables. Now inside this, we can directly copy this and we can create the objects. We don't need to call the save methods. We just need these movie objects. And also let's get rid of this, because we have already created the reference variables outside of this method. Alright, so now let's save this. So now we have this init method. We have added the add before each annotation, and inside this we have set up the data. So now before running every JUnit test case, this init method will be executed. Now inside this, we are going to remove all of these data, all of the code that we have created the movie objects. So what I'll do is, I'm going to get rid of this. So let's get rid of this. We don't need this. And also inside this, we don't need this as well. Let's get rid of we don't need to remove this calling the save method, because we need that save method. Similarly here also, let's get rid of this, and here also let's get rid of this. Just refactor the code, that's it. Alright, so now we have refactored all of this code. So with this, now let's save the file and let's run the JUnit test cases. Right click on this, choose run as JUnit test. Like before, all the JUnit test cases should pass. We should see the green bar. Alright, we can see the green bar. All of our test cases has been passed, which means all our code is executed correctly. All of these test cases behavior is working as expected. But what we have done is, we have refactored the code. We have moved that common code into the method init, and we have added the add before each annotation. And this is a lifecycle annotation, you can call it as. This method will be executed before running each and every JUnit test case. So inside this method, we are setting up some data that are required for all of our test cases. Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is the part 2 of the tutorial, writing JUnit test cases for Spring Boot application. In the part 1, we discussed about writing the JUnit test cases for the repository layer. In case if you missed that video, the link will be given in the description section of this video. Make sure to watch that video before proceeding this video. In this video, we're going to write the JUnit test cases for the service layer. We're going to create a service which is movie service, and we're going to create a bunch of methods which will call the repository methods, and then we are going to write the JUnit test cases. We're going to use Mockito along with JUnit to test the service layer. Mockito is a Java testing framework. Using that, we can mock the objects and we can test the test cases. The reason why we are going to use Mockito is we are not going to test the real implementation methods. Instead, we are going to implement a fake, we are going to provide a fake implementation, and we're going to test the methods. We are going to tell that Mockito, whenever a method is called, what should be the return value. We are going to provide the fake return value, and we are going to tell whenever this method is called, this will be the response. We are going to provide the fake implementation, and we are going to test those test cases. We are going to test those responses. That is why we are going to use the Mockito. Along the way, we are going to learn about the Mockito annotations like @mock and @inject mocks, how to inject the mock objects, how to mock the Java objects, and also we're going to learn about how we can write the efficient test cases for the service layer. So this is going to be a really interesting. Let's get started. So in interest of time, I have already created the service layer, which is movie service. If you open this movie service, we have added the @service annotation, and also we have added the required args constructor annotation. We have injected the movie repository into this service class. Inside this, we have created the save method, get all movies, get movie by ID, update movie, and delete movie. And inside these methods, we are just calling the repository method, which is save, find all, find by ID, and save, and also delete. Pretty much a normal Spring Boot service layer. In case if you are already familiar with this, you can easily relate to this. In case if you are new to Spring Boot application, I highly recommend you to check out my videos where I have already created how to create the REST APIs and how to create the service layer inside the Spring Boot application. Now we have this movie service. All we need to do is we need to start writing the JUnit test cases for this movie service. What I'll do is inside the source test Java, I'm going to create a new package. Let's call this service, and inside this create a new class, or also you can create the JUnit class. I'm going to create a Java class. Let's call this movie service test. Let me expand this. Now, in order to test our movie service class, of course, we need the movie service. So let's create a reference variable for the movie service. Let's call this movie service. And if you look at the movie service, it's dependent on the movie repository. So let's create a reference variable for the movie repository as well. Movie repository. Let's call this movie repository. Now let's create the JUnit test case. We're going to create the JUnit test case for the save method. So void save, and we need to add the test annotation. Also, we can add the display name annotation to provide the custom name for the test case. Should save the movie object to database. Inside this, we will test the JUnit test case. So first of all, if you look at this movie service is actually not, we are going to call the movie service methods. So we need the instance of this movie service class, but we are not going to use the auto-wired annotation. Instead, we are going to use the Mockito annotation. Just like I said before, we are going to provide the fake implementation. So we are going to use one of the Mockito annotation, which is inject mocks. And for this movie repository, we are going to use the mock annotation. So this mock annotation is going to mock this movie repository. Like I said before, we are not going to test the real implementation. We are going to provide a fake implementation. So we need to provide a fake implementation for this movie repository. So we are going to provide the we are going to create a mock object for this movie repository. For that, we are going to use the mock annotation, and this inject mocks, it is going to create an instance of the movie service, and it is going to inject the movie repository. This movie repository is of course a mock object. this basically we're going to use this inject mocks is to inject the mock object to this movie service, because this movie service is dependent on the movie repository. So we are going to first create the mock object of the dependent class, which is movie repository, and we are going to inject this dependent mock object to this movie service. This inject mocks is going to create an instance of this movie service, and it is going to inject the mocked objects to this movie service. That's it. And inside this, we are going to create the movie object. So let's create a movie object. What I'll do is, let's go to our previous test cases. Let's go to the repository, movie repository test. Just copy this avatar movie object and paste it. Let's provide movie, and also we are going to set the ID as well, avatar movie dot set ID, which is 1, and we need to append L because that will be a long. Okay, now we have the movie object. Now we need to tell Mockito whenever the movie repository calls the save method, it should return this avatar movie object as a response. For that, we're going to use when method. When movie repository dot save method call whenever the save method is called, and for this save method we are going to pass the movie object. So whenever the movie repository dot save method is called, we have to return the avatar movie object back. And for this, what we are going to do is, we are not going to directly pass this avatar movie. Instead, we are going to use any. Let's use any from the Mockito package. So what I'll do is, I'll go to the above and let's import the any from argument matchers, and now any, and we're going to pass the movie class, movie dot class. Basically what we are trying to do is, whenever the movie repository calls the save method, and for this save method we need to pass the movie object. So any movie object is passed to this save method, then we need to return the avatar movie. We are just stubbing this method, we are just stubbing this save method. We are not going to test the real implementation of this save method. Instead, we are going to stub this save method. We are going to provide the fake implementation for this save method, which is whenever the movie repository calls the save method and it should pass the movie object, any movie object, then it should return the avatar movie object as a response. That is what the then return will do. Once we have done all of this, what we need to do is, we are going to call the service method using the movie service dot save, and to this save method we are going to pass the avatar movie. We're going to pass the avatar movie which we have created above, and this will return the new movie object, new movie. Now we are going to assert this using the assertion. So assert not null. We're going to pass this new movie. We're going to check this new movie should not be null, and also we're going to check assert that. We're going to pass this new movie dot get name. We're going to check equals or is equal to. We're going to check with the movie name, that is avatar. Now let's save this. So now we have returned the test case for the save method. What we have done is we have created the movie object, and also we tell Mockito that whenever the movie repository.save method is called, and to this save method we can pass any movie object. Whenever we pass the movie object to this save method, then we have to return this avatar movie which we have set up at the above. And we now after that we have stubbed this method. Now we have stubbed this save method, and now when we call the movie service method, which is save method, and we are going to pass the avatar movie, that will gives us the new movie object. It is going to test the method, which is the movie service method. It is going to test it, and inside this movie service, if you look at this, we are calling the movie repository save method, and we have already stubbed this method. Whenever the movie repository save method is called, we are going to return the fake value, which is we are going to provide the dummy, we are going to return the dummy value or the dummy object, which is the avatar movie. And at last we are going to assert the values, assert the object using the assert not null and assert that. We are going to check assert not null, and we're going to pass the object. We're going to check the object is not null, and also we're going to check the object, one of the property, which is name property, contains the name avatar. So with this, save the file and select the method, right click, choose run as, choose JUnit test. Our test case should pass, but for some reason it is failing. I know that because we are using the Mockito annotations, that is inject mocks and @inject mock @mocks. If you are using these annotations, then this class should also contains the annotation. We have to use the annotation that is extend with. So let's use extend with, and we need to provide the class name, that is Mockito extension.class, Mockito extension.class. Save this. Now when you run the test case, our test case should pass. We should see the green bar. Let's verify that. You can see we should see the green bar. Our test case has passed. So what we have done is we have created this movie service test, and we have added the annotation extend with, because we are using the Mockito annotations. We have used the inject mocks and the mock annotation. So the mock annotation will mock the object, which is the movie repository, and inject mocks, it is going to create an instance of the movie service, and it is going to inject the mocked objects, which is movie repository. And we have created the test case, that is save, and we have created the movie object, and also we have stubbed the method, which is the save method, using when and then return. And we have called the service method using the movie service, and we have assert the object. We have verified the expected result is correct or not using the assert not null and assert that. Now we have returned the JUnit test case for this save method. Now let's continue with the other methods as well. So now let's go ahead and write the JUnit test case for this get all movies. So inside this, create a method void get movies. Let's add the annotation test. Also add the display name annotation to provide the custom name for our test case, that is should return list of movies with size 2. Inside this, first we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. I'll just copy this. So copy this and paste it. We need one more movie. Let's go to the movie repository test and copy this Titanic movie object. Paste it. We can create a movie object using movie we need to provide the ID as well. Titanic movie dot set ID to the ID is 2. Let's save this. So now we have set up the data that are required for our test case. Now we need to stop the method. For that we are going to use when. Before that we need to add these movie objects to the list. So let's create a list which is of type movie. Let's call this list new array list. Let's import the list from util package. List.add Titanic movie. Also list.add Avatar movie. Now we have added these two movies to the list. Next we can stub the method when movie repository. So this movie repository called the find all method, because if you go to the movie service, inside this get all movies we are calling the find all method. So we have to stub this method. Let's go inside this movie service test. When movie repository call the find all method, then we have to return the list which we have set up above. Then we have to use then return we have to list. And now we can verify whether the expected result is correct or not using assertions. So we're going to use assert equals. The expected is 2 and the actual is, so okay, before that I forgot to call the service method. So let's make use of the movie service dot find all, or what is the name of this, get all movies. So get all movies, this is going to return the list of movies. Let's call this list of movies. Now we can verify the size of the movies. Movies.size, this will gives us the size of the movie. Now we can use assert not null. We can pass the movies. So save this. So what we have done is we have set up the data. We have created two movie objects, the Avatar movie and the Titanic movie. And next we have created a list, array list, and we have added the movies to the array list. Now the list contains the size is 2, and now we have stubbed the method using when and then return. So when movie repository call the find all method, we have to return the list which we have set up above. And at last we have used the movie service to call the get all movies service method, and we have verified whether the expected result is correct or not using the assertions. We have used assert equals and assert not null. With this, save the file and select the test case, right click, choose run as, choose JUnit test. We should see the green bar. You can see should return list of movies with size 2. We should see the green bar. Now that we have written a JUnit test case for get all movies, let's move on with the next test case. So let's go to the movie service. The next we are going to write the JUnit test case for this method, which is get movie by ID. Let's go to the movie service test, and before we writing the unit test case, if you look at this implementation, there are two things can happen. One, either we get the movie object, or it should throw an exception, that is runtime exception. So in this case we have to write two test cases. One is to get the movie object and another one is to throw the exception. Let's go to the movie service test and let's write the JUnit test case for returning the movie object by its ID. Void, I'm going to call this get movie by ID. Let's add the annotation test, and inside this first we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. So I'm going to copy this movie object and paste it. And once we have done that, we need to stub the method. If you go to the movie service, we are calling the find by ID method. We need to stub this method. Inside the movie service test, we're going to make use of the when movie repository dot find by ID, and to this we're going to pass the ID. What I'll do is I'm going to call any long. So if you pass any long method, what I'll do is just go to the top, expand this similar to this any. We are going to import the any long, and in the down we're going to call any long. So if you pass any long value to this find by ID method, then we should return this movie object itself. So let's pass avatar movie, but this is an optional of type. This is going to return the optional of type, so I'm going to cut this. Let's make use of the optional.off, and we will pass the avatar movie object. So now we have stubbed the method. All we need to do is we need to call the service method movie service dot find, not find, it's get movie by ID, and to this we need to pass the ID. What I'll do is I'm going to pass the movie ID, which is 1. This is going to return a movie object. I'm going to call this existing movie, and in the down, once we get this existing movie, we're going to verify whether this result is correct or not using the assertion. So let's make use of the assert not null, and we're going to pass the object existing movie. And similarly, assert that, we're going to verify assert that. Let's pass existing movie dot get ID is equal to 1. Save this. Now we can run the test case. Before that, let's add the display name annotation to provide the custom name for the test case. Should return the movie object. Save this. Now select the JUnit test case and right click, choose run as and JUnit test. We should see the green bar. You can see should return the movie object, and our test case is passed. So let's recap. What we have done is we have written a JUnit test case for this get movie by ID, and this implementation, if you look at the implementation, there are two things can happen. One, either we get the movie object or we get the runtime exception. So now we have to write two test cases. So far we have written a single test case for this scenario, that is returning the movie object by its ID. We need to stub the find by ID method, and inside the movie service test we have set up the data that are required for our test case, and we have stubbed the method find by ID, and we pass it the any long value to this find by ID, and we have returned the avatar movie object as a response. We have stubbed the find by ID method. We have provided the fake implementation, and finally we have called the get movie by ID service method using the movie service. This will return the existing movie, and once we get the result, we are going to verify whether the response is correct or not using the assert not null and assert that. And when we run the test case, we should see the green bar. Now that we have written a JUnit test case for returning the movie object, now let's write one more JUnit test case for the another scenario, that is throwing the exception. Void, I'm going to call this get movie by ID for exception. Let's add the test annotation. Let's also add display name annotation to provide the custom name for the test case. Should throw the exception. Inside this, we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. So copy this and paste it. Next, we need to stub the method. We need to stub the find by ID method. When movie repository dot find by ID, we're going to pass the ID. We're going to stub this find by ID method. So for this, we are going to pass the ID. That is, if you look at this, we have set up the movie object, which is of the ID, which is 1, and here we are going to pass the ID 2, or we can also pass the ID. Let's say what we'll do is, okay, we will pass the ID 2, which is of type long, and then we should return the avatar movie itself, the avatar movie object itself. We can make use of this optional of, let's pass the avatar movie object. So when the movie repository find by ID method is called and we have passed the ID, which is 2, and whenever we pass this, it should return the avatar movie object itself. Okay, I think this is, instead of 2, let's pass 1, the ID 1, because we are returning the avatar movie object back, and the ID of that avatar movie is 1. And inside this, what we are going to do is, now we have to call the service method. So in order to call the service method, we are going to make use of the assert throws, because we have to throw the exception. We have to write a test case for throwing the exception. So assert throws, and inside this, what we're going to do is we're going to provide the exception name, that is runtime exception dot class, which is the first parameter. The second parameter is a lambda expression. Inside this, we are going to make use of the movie service to call the service method, that is get movie by ID, and we're going to pass the movie ID. What I'll do is I'm going to directly pass the ID 2, which is of type long. If you look at this, here we are calling the get movie by ID, and for this we are going to pass the movie ID 2, but here we are stubbing the method find by ID with, we are passing the movie ID as 1. So this will throw the exception as expected, and we are verifying that the exception is runtime exception. So that's all about writing the JUnit test case for handling the exceptions. So with this, now save this, and also I'm going to add the semicolon. So let's save this, and now if you select this test case and choose run JUnit test case, we should see the green bar. You can see we should see the green bar, which means it has throw the exception, and the exception is runtime exception, and it verifies that the result is expected, because inside this service we are throwing the runtime exception whenever the ID is not found. And here also it is happening same, because we are passing the ID movie ID 2, and here we are stubbing the find by ID method with a movie ID 1. So when we pass this, it is going to not able to find the ID 2, and it is going to throw the runtime exception, and we are going to verify that assert throws runtime exception, which will pass the test case. Let's say for example I'm going to pass 1 instead of 2. Let's save this. Now this time we are stubbing the same method with the movie ID 1, and also here calling the service method by 1 as a movie ID. This time it will not throw the exception, it will return the movie object, but here we are verifying it should throw the runtime exception, but in this case it will not throw the exception and our test case will fail. We can verify that. Select this, choose run as and JUnit test. We should see the exception. You can see, let me expand this. You can see expected runtime exception to be thrown, but nothing was thrown. So our test case has been failed. Okay, now you understand about how we can handle the exceptions, how we can write the test cases for handling the exceptions. So now I'm going to change this back to 2, save this. We can run the test case again and we should see the green bar. You can see we should get the green bar. Now that we have written a test case for get movie by ID, we have written the test case for 2 scenarios. Now we have to write the JUnit test case for updating the movie. Let's go to the movie service, and if you look at this update movie method, inside this we are actually calling 2 movie repository methods. One is find by ID and this save method. So we need to stub these 2 methods. Let's go to the movie service test, and inside this let's start writing the JUnit test case. Void update movie. We need to add the test annotation. We'll also add display name annotation. Let's provide the custom name for the JUnit test case. Should update the movie into the database. Inside this, first we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. I'm going to copy this and paste it. Once we set up the data, next we need to stub the method when movie repository dot find by ID, find by ID, and we can call any long. We have to pass the long to this find by ID, so we can pass any long type. Then we have to return the avatar movie. We are going to make use of this optional of and avatar movie, which is our movie object. Next we have to stub the save method as well. When movie repository dot save, and we're going to make use of this any, and if to this save method, if you pass any movie object, movie dot class, then we have to return the avatar movie object back. Okay, now we have stubbed these 2 methods. Now we have to call the service method, and before that we have to, before calling the service method, we have to update the movie object. So we have to update any of the values. So avatar movie dot set, we're going to update the genre. Instead of action, we are going to set this to fantasy. Now we have updated this avatar movie. Now let's make use of the movie service dot update movie, and to this we are going to pass the avatar movie, and also we need to pass the ID as well. So ID I'm going to pass, let's say 1, and this is going to return the movie back. Movie, I'm going to call this existing movie, or we can call updated movie. Once we get this updated movie object back, we can verify using the assertion. So assert not null, updated movie. Also we're going to assert equals, we're going to verify because we have updated the genre, so we can verify the expected is fantasy, and actual is updated movie dot get genre. Save this. Now when we select the test case, and when we run the test case, we should see the green bar. You can see we should get the green bar. Our test case has been passed. So what we have done is we have set up the data that are required for our test case, and we have stubbed the methods find by ID and save method, because inside the movie service update movie method we are calling the two methods, that is find by ID and save method. So we have to stub these two methods. We're going to provide a fake implementation for these two methods. That's what we have done using the when and then return. You can also use given and will return instead of the when and then return. That is also completely fine, but I am using the when and then return. And we have updated the genre to fantasy instead of the action. And finally, we have called the movie service method, that is update movie, and we have passed the object which we want to update, and also we are going to pass the ID which is 1, the movie ID 1, and that will return the updated movie. And once we get the updated movie, we have verified the result, whether the result is correct or not, using the assert not null and assert equals. And when we run the test case, we should get the green bar. Our test case is passed. Now let's write a JUnit test case for deleting the movie. Let's go to the movie service, and inside this delete movie method, we are calling the find by ID method as well as the delete method. So we need to stub these two methods. So let's go to the service test class. Before that, if you look at this method, it is going to return void. So if you think that like how we can test, what we can how to do the assertions for the return will, because this method does not return anything, then how we can verify that? So there is a way we can do that. Let's see how we can do that. Let's go to the movie service test, and let's create a method void delete movie. We can add the annotation @test. Also let's add display name annotation, and we can provide the custom name should delete the movie from database. And inside this, first of all, we're going to set up the data that are required for our test case. Let's copy this movie object and paste it. Next, like I said before, we have to stub two methods. One is find by ID and another one is delete. But if you look at the delete method, if you look at this delete method, this is not going to return anything. This is going to return void. So let's see how we can stub this method. When movie repository dot find by ID, and we're going to pass any long. So if you pass any long to this find by ID, then we have to return the avatar movie. So let's make use of the optional of the movie object, which is avatar movie. Now we have stubbed the find by ID method. Now for the delete method, what we are going to do is we are going to use do nothing, because when we call the delete method, it should return void, right? So in that case, we will not get anything. So we have to call a method do nothing dot when we call the movie repository, we're going to call the delete method. And when we call the delete method, we're going to pass the movie object which we want to delete. So let's make use of this any, and to this we're going to pass any movie object. So movie.class, that's it. So when we call the movie repository delete method to passing the movie object as a parameter, we have to do nothing. So we are going to call this do nothing method before the when method. On this we're going to call when and delete. So it's a simple understanding, right? It's a simply English statement. So when we call the delete method, should not return anything. So it should not do anything. So that is what the do nothing. And at last we need to call the movie service dot delete, and for this delete movie we are going to pass the ID. I'm going to pass the ID which is 1, and finally once we have done that, like I said before, this is not going to return anything. Okay, like we can't do anything like assert not null, assert that, because this will not return anything. So what we can do is we can verify whether this method is called or not. Okay, whether the movie repository is called or not, this movie repository delete method is called or not, we can verify that. So verify, we are going to make use of this verify, and movie repository, we can check how many times that has been called. We are going to use times, and we're going to pass 1. Okay, it should be called 1 time. So delete, and we're going to pass the object name which is avatar movie. So let's save this. So we need to tell that the movie repository method is called the delete method, and we're going to pass the avatar movie when this has been called. Whether it is called or not, we're going to verify that. If it is called, it has been called how many times? We are expecting that it should be called 1 time. So let's save this. With this, select the test case, right click, choose run as JUnit test case. We should see the green bar. You can see our test case has been passed. Hope you understand that it's quite difficult for me to explain what is happening here, but by looking at the code you can easily understand. We have set up the data that are required for our test case. We have set up the movie object, and then we have stubbed the find by ID method, and also we have stubbed the delete method as well. But the delete method will return void. So in order to stub the delete void methods, we are going to call this do nothing method, because as soon as we call those methods, it should not do anything. So that's why we are going to call this do nothing method. And at last we are going to call the service method delete movie, and we're going to pass the ID which we want to delete using the ID. And finally what we're going to do is we're going to verify, because this we cannot do any assertions, because this is going to return when we delete the movie, we are going to return nothing, we will get the void. So because of that, we are going to verify whether the movie repository delete method is called or not. If it is called, how many times it is going to call, that we're going to verify it. So we have provided the times of 1, whether it has been called 1 time or not. That is what we're going to verify it here. And when we run the test case, we should get the green bar. Our test case is running as expected. Now that we have written our test cases for all the service methods, and let's actually run this JUnit test class one at last time. Instead of running the individual test cases, let's run the JUnit test class, and we should get all the test cases to be passed. So right click on this, choose run as, and JUnit test. We should see the green bar, and all the test cases should be passed. You can see we are getting the green bar, and all the test cases has been passed. Now what we can do is we can refactor these methods, because in every method we are actually setting up the same data. So instead of setting up the data in each and every test case, what we can do is we can make use of the JUnit lifecycle method, much like how we have used inside the repository test JUnit class. We're going to use the add before each, and we can set up the data. So each time before running the test case, it is going to set up the data for us. So let's do that. I'll just copy this, and inside the movie service test at the very top, paste it. And also let's go to this movie repository test, copy these private fields and paste it. Now we get the two objects, the avatar movie as well as the Titanic movie. So now we can get rid of all of this. So let's get rid of this. Similarly, let's remove these as well. And inside this get movie by ID, remove the setting up the data. Similarly, inside the get movie by ID for exception, we can get rid of the data that we have set up. I'll do the same thing for all these methods. Now we have removed the code, the repetitive code. We can test it one last time. So let's save this. Now, okay, we are getting some exception. Okay, that is some typo error. So let's save this. So now when we right click on this, choose run as, choose JUnit test, all of our test cases should be passed. We should see the green bar. Okay, one of the method is getting failed, that is actual not to be null. Okay, which is that? We can verify that. Should return a movie, should return the movie object, should return the movie object, should return the movie object. Okay, so this is the one that we are expecting. Okay, what we have done is, here we are not setting the ID. Okay, because we have copied from the movie repository.test. Here we are not setting the ID. So let's set the ID, avatar movie dot set ID 1, and we can also set the ID for the Titanic movie. So Titanic movie set ID 2. Save this. Now when we run the JUnit test case, we should see the green bar. All our test case should be passed. You can see all of our test case has been passed. We should get the green bar. Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to the class writing JUnit test cases for the Spring Boot application. This is the continuation of the previous video. In case if you missed the part 1 and part 2, the link will be given in the description section of this video. Go ahead and watch those parts before proceeding this video. In the part 1 and part 2, we discussed about writing the JUnit test cases for the repository layer and the service layer. And in this part, we are going to learn how we can write the JUnit test cases for the controller layer. So let's get started. Now you can enroll to my Udemy premium course, which is Build Production Ready REST API in Spring Boot and Data JPA. We're going to build the expense tracker API. You will learn a whole lot of things. Make sure to check out this course and also use this coupon code before enrolling to this course. And also you can enroll to the another course, which is building the Spring Boot application with Thymeleaf. We're going to create a web application which is expense manager, and you will learn a whole lot of things. Also you can use this coupon code for this course as well. Now back to the video. In interest of time, I have already created the controller layer. Inside this controller package, I have created the movie controller. If you open this movie controller, we have created methods. We have exposed bunch of REST endpoints. Basically, we have exposed the REST endpoints for the CRUD operations, saving the movie and updating the movie, deleting the movie, getting the movie by ID, and getting all the movies. The basic CRUD operations endpoints we have exposed here. And our goal is to write the JUnit test cases for all these REST endpoints. Like I said before, we are going to keep all our JUnit test cases inside this source test Java. So if you open this, we have the repository package and the service package, and similar to this controller package, we are going to create a package inside this source test Java as well. I'm going to create a new package. Let's call this controller. Inside this, create a new class. You can also create the JUnit class as well. Let's call this movie controller test, movie controller test. Let me expand this. So inside this, we're going to write the JUnit test cases for the controller layer. We're going to test these methods, the save method and update method and delete method, and all these methods. We're going to write the JUnit test cases. So if you look at this movie controller is dependent on the movie service. So we need to get the movie service as well inside this movie controller test. So let's create an instance variable of the movie service, private movie service, and let's call this movie service. And also we have to test these controller methods, right? So in order to test these controller methods, we are going to use the MockMvc. So let's auto-wire that as well. Private MockMvc, let's call this MockMvc, and also we are going to create a reference variable for the object mapper as well. I'm going to tell you later why we need this object mapper. So first let's get that object mapper as well. Object mapper, let's call this object mapper. And whenever we are testing the controller layer, whenever we are testing the controller classes, in that class we are going to add the annotation with @webmvc test annotation. So before adding the webmvc annotation, we can read few lines about that. So I'm going to open the browser and let's search for webmvc test. And if you open the first link, which is docs.spring.io, this is the official documentation for the webmvc test annotation. It has a great documentation. I highly recommend you to spend some time on this URL and read few lines about the webmvc test. I'm going to highlight few things. If you look at this annotation can be used for Spring MVC test that focuses only on the Spring MVC components. So we can use this annotation to test the MVC components such as controller, @controllers and @controller advice, JSON component and generic converter, filters, WebMVC configurer. So if you want to test these things, these components, then we can use the WebMVC test annotation. That is one thing. And the second thing is, using this annotation will disable the full auto configuration and instead apply only the configuration that are relevant to the MVC test. So that is a great advantage, right? Instead of using the full auto configuration, because if you use a full auto configuration, it will load everything that we don't want. Since we are only testing the controller layer, we can only use the required things, only we can use the relevant things. So that is why we are going to use this WebMVC test instead of the other annotations like Spring Boot test annotation. And also by default, test annotated with the WebMVC test will also auto configure the Spring security and MockMvc. You can see when we are using whenever we are using the WebMVC test, we will also use the MockMvc. So because this MockMvc will help us to test the controller layer methods. So basically whenever we are using the WebMVC test, we will also use the MockMvc annotation as well. And also if you look at this, typically WebMVC test is used to combine with the @mockbean or import to create any collaborators required by your controller beans. Let me come back to this MockBean in just a bit. So this is all about the WebMVC test. So remember, whenever we are testing the controller layers, we will add the annotation to that class with WebMVC test annotation, and in combination with WebMVC test, we will also auto-wire the one which we have discussed, that is MockMvc. We will auto-wire this MockMvc so that we can test the controller layer methods. So now let's go back to our code and let's add the annotation, that is WebMVC test annotation, and like I said before, we have to auto-wire this MockMvc. We need this MockMvc, so let's auto-wire this so that we can write we can make use of the controller layer methods to using this MockMvc. And also, like I said before, we need this object mapper as well. So let's auto-wire this object mapper as well, auto-wired. Okay, now we left with this movie service. Like I said, we have to mock this movie service. Okay, so what we can do is, if you look at the previous test cases, like if you go to the service and if you open this, we have used the mock annotation. This is from the Mockito dependency. Okay, we can use the @mock annotation as well, but instead of using the mock annotation, we are going to use another annotation which is from the Spring Boot test dependency, that is MockBean annotation. So this is also very similar to the mock annotation. It is also going to mock this movie service, but this is from the, you can see this is from the Spring Boot test dependency. This is not from the Mockito dependency. What is the difference between this mock and MockBean annotation? Both are creates the mock objects, and one we are going to use this MockBean annotation and mock annotation. It's very simple. If you're writing a test cases and that is does not depend on the a Spring container or Spring application context, then you can use the plain mock annotation. But if you're writing a test cases that are dependent on the Spring container or Spring application context, if you are creating a mock object for one of the beans which are already available in the Spring container or the Spring application context, then we are going to use this at mock bean annotation. Of course, this movie service is already available inside the Spring application context, and we want to mock this movie service, right? So in order to do that, we are going to use the mock bean annotation instead of the mock annotation. Just understand that if you are writing a test case and that test case is dependent on the Spring application context, if you are mocking for one of the bean which is available inside the application context, the Spring application context, then we are going to use the at mock bean annotation. That's it. Alright, we have now created the test class to test the controller layer. We have added the required annotation, and now we will start writing the JUnit test cases for the controller layer methods. Now let's start writing the JUnit test cases for the methods. So if you open the movie controller, and we're going to write the JUnit test case for this method, which is create method, and this method is responsible for creating a movie object inside the database. It is going to save the movie object into the database. And if you look at the method implementation, we are calling the service method, and all we need to do is we have to stub this method while we are writing the JUnit test case. Open the movie controller test and write the JUnit test case void should create new movie. This is the test case method name. Add the annotation test. You can also add the display name annotation to provide the custom name for the JUnit test case. And inside this test case, first of all, we are going to set up the data that are required for our test case. So go to this movie service test and copy this one of the movie object and paste it. Let's add movie. And now we have set up the data that are required for our test case. Next, we have to stub the method. So for that, we're going to use when movie service dot save. When we call the save method, it should return the response. We're going to make use of the then return the avatar movie object back, which we have set up at the top. And instead of the avatar movie, what we're going to do is we're going to pass any movie object. So for that, we're going to use the any method from the Mockito. So what I'll do is let's go to this movie service test and copy this any and any long and paste it at the top. Now we can make use of this any from the argument matchers, and let's pass the movie object. If you pass any movie object, then it should return the avatar movie back. So now we have stubbed the save method, the movie service save method. Next, we have to call the controller method. So for that, we're going to use this MockMvc. So we have autowired at the top, this dot MockMvc dot perform, and we are going to make use of the methods, the HTTP methods. And if you look at this movie controller create method, it uses the post mapping annotation, which is a post HTTP request. So for that, we are going to use this post method, and we will provide the URI, which is /movies. And do we have any other thing? Nothing. So /movies, and we will use this content type media type dot application underscore JSON UTF-8 dot content, and we are going to make use of this object mapper which we have auto-wired above. So I'm going to bring this to the next line, so this will be look nice. Object mapper dot write value as string, and we will pass this avatar movie as a parameter. Next, after this, this will throw an exception. We can handle that using the throws declaration, and let me get rid of this. We need this exception is fine. And if you look at this perform method is going to return the result actions, and we can get the result actions out of this. But what I'll do is I'm going to continue adding the chains, adding the methods as a chain. So and expect. If you look at this, once we make the HTTP request, we're going to expect the HTTP status code as 201, which is HTTP created, and we are going to expect that HTTP status code. So and expect status is created, and also we're going to expect the movie name, genre, and release date. So and expect JSON path $.name, the name property. We're going to compare against with the one which we have set up above. So avatar movie.get name similarly, and expect, okay, we have, okay, this is should be, we are going to make use of this is method. And next similarly, and expect JSON path $.genre avatar movie.get genre, and expect, okay, again I have missed this, so let's wrap it. Let's use the is method, and expect JSON path $.release date is avatar movie.get release date. Save this, and this is deprecated, so let's use application underscore JSON. Perfect. So let's save this. So what we have done is we have returned the JUnit test case, and we have set up the data that are required for our test case, and we have stubbed the method which is movieservice.save, and also we will make use of this MockMvc object to call the controller methods. We have made the post request for /mvc, and we have provided the content type and the content. For that we have used the object mapper, and we have convert this avatar movie object into a string, and we have once we have passed this, we have expected the values. We have expected the status code as created, and we have expected the avatar movie name, which is avatar, and also the genre we have expected it as action, and also the release date we have expected it as this one. And if everything goes well, this test case should pass. So let's verify that. So I'm going to select this, choose run as JUnit test. We should see the green bar. Let's see what do we get. Our test case is failed, which is interesting. I think we have missed something. We can verify that. Let's go to the top. We have added the WebMVC test, mockbean, autowired, and autowired. And let's open the console. Let's see. Okay, we are getting this release date. I think it's a typo error. Let's see. Release date. Let's go to this. Okay, what is this actually? JSON path release date expected to the, okay, it is coming in a string. So what I'll do is I'm going to add to string. So let's save this, Now if you select the JUnit test case, choose run as JUnit test, this time the test case should pass and we should see the green bar. You can see we will get the green bar and our test case is passed. So it's simple, right? We have set up the data that are required for our test case. We have stubbed the method, we have stubbed the movie service method, and we have make use of the MockMvc to call the controller methods. We have used the post method to make the HTTP call /movies, and the content type, we have provided the content as in string, and we have expected the status code as created, and we have expected the JSON the properties, name, genre, and release date. And we have converted that release date to a string because in the database it has been stored as a string. Now let's write a test case for getting the movies from the database. Let's go to the movie controller, and we have this get mapping API, which is /movies, and this is going to return the list of movies from the database. And if you look at the implementation of this method, we are calling the movie service get all movies method. We have to stub this method. Let's go to this movie controller test. Let's create the test case. Void should fetch all movies. Of course, you can give any name you want. We will add the test annotation. And inside this, first of all, we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. I'll go to this movie service test, and I'm going to copy the movies. Let's add the movie. And now we have the two movie objects. We have to add this to the list. So let's create the array list, new array list, which is of type movie. Next, let's make use of this list to add the objects, the avatar movie list dot add. Let's add the Titanic movie. So now we have added the movie objects to this list. The list contains the two objects. Now we can stub the method when movie service dot get all movies. We will return the list which we have set up at the top. This is the response. So we have stubbed this method. So whenever we call this movie service dot get all movies method, we should return the list, and this list contains two objects, the avatar movie object and the Titanic movie. Now we can make use of this MockMvc to make use of the /movies API. So we will make use of the get method. We will provide the URI /movies, and this /movies get API does not take any parameters. So what we can do is we can make use of this and expect. We're going to expect the HTTP status OK. So if you go to this movie controller, you can see the HTTP status OK that we are returning. And let's make use of this status dot is OK. And also we're going to expect the list size to be 2. So JSON path $.size. We're going to compare the size of the list. So let's make use of this list dot size. So I'm going to cut this. We have to make use of this is method and paste it and save this. So we can add the exception. So add throws declaration at the top. Now let's save this. So now what we have done is we have set up the data that are required for our test case. We have created two movie objects, and also we have created the array list, and we have added those movies to the list. Next, we are going to stub the service method using the movie service. We're going to stub the get all movies method, And finally, we will make use of this MockMvc to call the controller method. We will make use of this get method to make the get API for the /movies API, and we're going to expect the status code to be okay, and also we're going to expect the list size to be 2. With this, let's save this, and now select this and choose run as JUnit test case. Our test case should be passed. We should see the green bar, and you can see we get the green bar. Our test case is passed as expected. Now we are going to write a JUnit test case for getting the movie by ID API. So let's go to this movie controller, and we have this API which is /movies/the movie ID, which is a get mapping, and it is used to get the movie based on the ID. So let's write a JUnit test case for this API. Let's go to this movie controller test. Let's create a JUnit test case. Void should fetch one movie by ID. Let's add the test annotation. And inside this, first of all, let's go to this movie controller. And if you look at the implementation, we are calling the movie service method, which is get movie by ID. We have to stub this method. So inside this movie controller test, first of all, we have to set up the data that are required for our test case. So let's copy one of this movie object and paste it. Next, in the down, we are going to stub the method. Let's make use of this when movie service dot get movie by ID, and we are going to pass any ID, the long ID. So for that, we're going to make use of this any long. Then we are going to return the avatar movie object back, which we have set up at the top. So now we have stubbed this movie service get movie by ID method. Now we are going to make use of this MockMvc to call the controller method. Let's make use of this get method /movies/ID. So we're going to make use of this path variable ID. We need to pass the ID, so we can pass any long. So I'm going to pass 1L because this is the one that we have set up at the top, the ID 1. And we're going to expect the status to be 200. Status is okay. And also we are going to expect the name. Let's make use of this JSON path $.name. Let's make use of this is avatar movie dot get name. Also we can expect JSON path $.genre. Let's make use of this is method avatar movie dot get genre. You can also do it for release date as well, but I'm going to leave it as it is. So with this, we have to throws the declaration, add a throws declaration because this will throw the exception, and save this. So now we have returned the JUnit test case for getting the movie by ID. We have set up the data that are required for our test case. We have stubbed the method that is movie service get movie by ID, and we have passed the long. We will make use of the any long, and we will return the response that is the avatar movie. And we have make use of this MockMvc to make the API call that is /movies/movie ID, and we have expected the result, the status code to be okay, which is 200, and also we have expected the property name is avatar, and Also the property name the property name genre is to be action. With this, now when we run the JUnit test case, our test case should be passed. We should see the green bar. You can see we will get the green bar. Our test case is passed. Now let's write the JUnit test case for deleting the movie API. Let's go to this movie controller, and we have this delete mapping, which is deleting the movie from the database. And if you look at this, once we have made this request, we are returning the HTTP status as no content. And inside this, we are calling the movie service method, which is delete movie. So we have to stub this method. Let's go to this movie controller test and write the test case. Void should delete movie. Let's add the test annotation, and inside this, first of all, we have to set the data that are required for our test case. So I'll just copy this and I'll paste it. Once we set up the data, we have to stub the method. So when movie service dot delete movie, and we need to pass the movie ID. So we can pass the any long. So we can pass any long, then it should return we made some mistake, then something we made any long. Okay, so since if you look at this, this is going to return the void. So what I'll do is, let me get rid of this. We are going to make use of this do nothing. We have already used this inside our service layer test cases. Do nothing dot when movie service dot delete movie, and to this we're going to pass the any long. Okay, so because when we call this delete movie method, what will happen is this will return the void. To test the test cases which return the void, we're going to use do nothing method. So do nothing when movie service is called the delete movie method, and to this we're going to pass the any long ID. And finally, we will make use of this MockMvc to call the controller method perform. We will call the delete method and we will pass the URI / movies / ID, and we will pass the ID 1, which is of type long, and we are going to expect the status to be no content. So status is no content. That's it. We will add the throws declaration to handle the exception. So let's save this. What we have done is we have set up the data that are required for our test case, and we have stubbed the method. We have stubbed the method which return the void. So for that we will use the do nothing method, and finally we will call the delete method using the MockMvc, and we will expect the status to be no content. With this, let's save the file, and the moment we run the JUnit test case, we should see the green bar, our test case to be passed. You can see our test case is passed. We should see the green bar. Now we're going to write a JUnit test case for the last CRUD method, which is updating the movie. And if you go to this movie controller, we have this put mapping for /movies / the movie ID, and the HTTP status code, the response, we are sending it back as 200 OK. And inside this method, we are calling the service method, which is update movie. So we need to stub this method. So let's go to this movie controller test, create a JUnit test case, void should update movie. We can add the annotation test, and inside this we are going to set up the data that are required for our test case. And next we will make use of this when and then return to stub the method when movie service dot update movie, and to this we're going to pass the any movie object. So let's use any movie dot class, and we need to pass the ID as well. So let's make use of this any long. So if you pass the movie object, any movie object, as well as the long, any long type or the any long ID, we should return the movie object which we have set up at the top, that is avatar movie. Now we have stubbed this service method. All we need to do is we have to test the controller method. So let's use this dot MockMvc dot perform, and we have this method called put the URL /movies/id, and we can pass the ID, that is 1L. You can pass any ID, the 1, 2, 3, anything we can pass, because we have set up it here as any long. If you pass any long here, that should be stub the method. And we have to set up the content type, because we have to for that update method we have to pass the JSON data. So for that we're going to use the media type dot application underscore JSON, and also we have to set up the content which is we will make use of this object mapper dot write value as string. You have to pass the JSON object. So the object which we are going to convert it as JSON is avatar movie, and we will expect the status to be status dot is okay, and we're going to expect the result. So for that we're going to use the JSON path $.name. Let's make use of this is method, is avatar movie dot get name, and expect. We can also expect the genre as well. So JSON path $.genre. We'll make use of this is method, is avatar movie dot get genre, and we can add the throws declaration. We don't need this JSON processing exception. Let's save this. So what we have did is we have set up the data that are required for our test case. We have stubbed the method, that is update movie, and next we have make use of this MockMvc to call the controller method. We will make use of this put method to make the HTTP put request, and we have expected the status code to be okay, which is 200, and also we have expected the JSON property which is named to be avatar, and also it is to be the action to be genre to be action. So with this, let's save the changes and select the test case, choose run as, and choose JUnit test. You can see test case has been passed. We should see the green bar. Our test case is passing as expected. So far we have written a test cases for all the APIs. Now let's go ahead and run all these test cases one at a time. So just right click on this, choose run as JUnit test case, we should see the green bar and all the test cases to be passed. So let's verify it. You can see we will get the green bar and all the test cases to be passed. If anything goes wrong, then these test cases should be failed. Alright, so now what I'll do is, in every test case, we are actually setting up the data. Instead of setting up the data in each and every test case, let's make it common. So much like in our previous layers, what we have done is we have used this before each annotation to set up the common data. So let's do the same thing. So I'll just copy this. And paste it at the top. And also I'm going to declare these two properties. Alright, so now inside this I'm going to get rid of these the data that we have set up. So let's get rid of this. Similarly, inside this also I'm going to get rid of this, and here also I'm going to get rid of this. So let's save this. So now we have used this lifecycle method, the lifecycle annotation, which is provided by JUnit, and before running each and every test case, this is going to run this and we are going to set up the data. So with this, let's save the file, and now when we run the JUnit test class, we should see the green bar and all the test cases to be passed, just like before. Super, you can see the green bar and all these test cases has been passed, and our test cases is working as expected. Alright, now we have returned the JUnit test cases for all the layers, the controller layer, the repository layer, and the service layer. In the next part, we are going to perform the integration testing or the end-to-end testing. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and smash that like button and also subscribe to the channel for the future videos. I will see you in the next video. Hi, welcome back to the course Write JUnit Test Cases for Spring Boot application using JUnit and Mockito. This is Bhushan. Let's get started. Now you can enroll to my Udemy premium course, which is Build Production Ready REST API in Spring Boot and Data JPA. We're going to build the expense tracker API. You will learn a whole lot of things. Make sure to check out this course and also use this coupon code before enrolling to this course. And also you can enroll to the another course, which is building the Spring Boot application with Thymeleaf. We're going to create a web application which is Expense Manager, and you will learn a whole lot of things. Also, you can use this coupon code for this course as well. Now back to the video. In the previous video, we discussed about writing the JUnit test cases for the controller layer. In case if you missed the previous video, the link will be given in the description section of this video. Go ahead and watch the previous video before proceeding this video. In this video, we will perform the integration testing. We're going to write the JUnit test cases for the integration testing. So how we are going to do the integration testing? So far, the test cases that we have written in our application, those are all independent to each other. We have written the JUnit test cases for individual layers. We have written the JUnit test cases for the controller layer, repository layer, and the service layer. And if you look at these JUnit test cases, these are all independent to each other. These test cases are not dependent on any other layers. So far what we have done is we have just faked the implementation, and we have, using the Mockito, we have tested the application. We have not tested the real implementation. We have just provided the fake implementation, and we have tested the each individual units, meaning we have tested a single unit or single methods inside the individual layers. But for now, we have to do the integration testing, which means we have to test the entire flow. We have to test the entire features. For example, the save operation, delete operation, update operation, or if we have a login operation or registration operation, we have to test the entire feature. And to do that, we are going to use the real database instead of the in-memory database. So far we have used the H2 in-memory database, and for now we are going to use the real database, the real MySQL database, and we are going to test the entire implementation. We are going to test the real implementation, and we are not going to use the Mockito for this, because the whole idea of using Mockito was to mock the objects, to mock the implementations. But for now we are not going to mock anything, because we are not providing any fake implementation. We have to test the complete feature. So for that we are not going to use Mockito. We're going to use the JUnit, and also we will make use of the Spring Boot test dependency to test the entire feature. So let's get started. So the first step is we have to add the dependency inside our pom.xml. We have to add the MySQL dependency, and also we have to configure the data source inside our application.properties file. So let's do that. I'm inside the STS IDE. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the browser and search for star.spring.io. Let's go to the Spring initializer and click on this add dependency and search for MySQL driver. Click explore and copy the dependency. This is the dependency that we are looking for. Copy this. Now let's go back to the STS and open the pom.xml. First of all, we have to comment this in-memory database. So let's comment this and let's add the MySQL driver dependency. Save the file. This will take a couple of seconds to download all the dependencies that are related to MySQL dependency. So once it is done, next we have to configure the data source. Let's go to the resources section, open the application.properties file. We have just added this show SQL to true. Now let's configure the data source. spring.datasource.url. We are going to provide the JDBC URL. JDBC :MySQL :/localhost :3306. You can provide the database name. I'm going to provide the database name as moviesdb. Next, we have to provide the data source username, spring.datasource.username. In my case, it's root spring.datasource.password. Make sure to change the username and password as per your MySQL installation. And also I'm going to add one more property to create the database tables. So spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl-auto. We're going to set this to update. With this, save the file. Now we have configured the data source for MySQL database, and inside the MySQL database we have to create this database, which is moviesdb. Let's go to the MySQL workbench, and I have already created this database. If you expand this, there are no tables. When we start the application, it is going to create the tables for us. So go ahead and create this database. Once we have configured this data source, we can close this file. We don't need this, and we can also close this pom.xml, and let's close this as well. Now in order to write the integration JUnit test cases, we are going to create a new package inside this source test Java. Let me create a new package. I'm going to call this integration, and inside this let's create a new class. You can also create the JUnit class. I'm going to call this movies integration test. You can give any name you want. I just call this as movies integration test. And inside this, first of all, we are going to set up few things. Before that, we have to use the annotation in order to do the integration testing. We are going to use one of the Spring provided annotation, which is Spring Boot test annotation. Before using that, we can go ahead and read few lines about that annotation. So let's go to the browser. Let's go to the browser and search for @springboot test docs, and go to the first link, docs.spring.io. Go ahead and read few lines about this annotation. It has a great documentation. I'm going to highlight few things. So using this annotation, we can use as the Spring Boot context loader as the default context loader. So using this annotation, we can load the context loader, the Spring Boot context loader. That is very important. So it is going to load all the components and also automatically searches for the Spring Boot configuration. It will automatically searches the configuration annotation, the Spring Boot auto configuration annotation, and it also allows us to allows the custom environments properties to define the properties attribute. And the most important thing is it provides the support for different web environment modes, including the ability to start a fully running web server listening on a defined or random port. This is very important. So it will provide a different web environment modes, and we can using this, it provides an ability to start the fully managed web server, just like how we will start the Tomcat web server. It will also start the web server that can be listened on a defined port, or it will also run on a different on a random port. So that is all about the Spring Boot test, and we're going to use this annotation to test the write the integration test cases. So let's go to the STS and let's add this annotation, Spring Boot test annotation, Spring Boot test annotation. And like I said, it provides a different web environment modes. So let's configure the web environment to set the random port. So Spring Boot test dot web environment dot random port. So it is going to start the web server on a random port, but once it started the web server, we can get the port as well. So for that, we're going to use the annotation local server port. So I'm going to create a reference variable for that, private int port, and let's add the annotation local server port. So this will give us the port number when it started the web server. Next, we are going to prepare the URL that we are going to test. So private string base URL, I'm going to call this as base URL, http://localhost. Next, in order to test the entire control flow, we are going to use the REST template. We have to make the web request. So private static REST template. I'm going to make this as static because we are going to initialize this inside the static block. So let's call this REST template, and also we need the movie repository. So let's auto wire the movie repository as well. Movie repository. So, and finally, we are going to initialize this REST template inside the static folder. So we are going to use one of the JUnit lifecycle methods, that is before all. So before running all the test cases, it is going to initialize this REST template. So public static void init. The method name you can give anything you want. Let's add the annotation before all, and inside this we will initialize the REST template. REST template is equal to new REST template. We're going to create the object of it, and now we are going to add the annotation auto wired, and also we have to prepare the web endpoints before running each and every JUnit test cases. So for that, I'm going to use one more lifecycle method, which is public void before setup. This is the method name I'm going to call. So before running each and every JUnit test case, we are going to set up something that is inside this. Let's make use of the base URL. Base URL is equal to base URL. I'm going to concatenate the string First of all, we have to concatenate the port number. After this localhost, we don't know the port on which it is going to run. So localhost colon the port number. The port number we will get this from this local server port. So let's use this port as well, port, and after this we are going to concatenate the path, which is /movies. So now we have prepared this base URL. So this is going to, we are going to prepare this base URL before running each and every JUnit test case. So for that we are going to use the before each annotation. Similarly, we are also going to use after each annotation. And let's create a method public void after setup. So inside this, what we're going to do, so after running each and every JUnit test case, we are going to clean up the database. So for that, I'm going to make use of this movie repository. That is why we have auto-wired this. So movie repository dot delete all. This is going to clean up the database. That's it. So this is what the initial setup for our integration test. So let's recap what we have done. We have created the class and we have added the annotation, Spring Boot test annotation. This is going to load all the components to test the entire control flow of the application, or to test the entire features. And it provides a different web environment modes, and we have used one of the web environment to get the random port. It is going to provide ability to start the fully web server, and once it started the web server, we are going to get the port using this local server port, and we have created the reference variable for this server port, that is port. And also we have prepared the base URL using this base URL property, and we have initialized the REST template. We are going to use this REST template to test the endpoints, and we have initialized this REST template before running all the test cases. So we have used the before all annotation to initialize the REST template, and also we have used the movie repository. We have auto-wired this movie repository to clean up the database after running each and every JUnit test case. For that, we have used the after each annotation, and also we have used the before each annotation to prepare the web URL or the REST endpoints before running each and every JUnit test case. Okay, now we have done the initial setup. Now let's go ahead and start writing the JUnit test cases for the endpoints. Alright, now let's go ahead and write the JUnit test case for the save operation. So if you open this controller, let me open this controller, the movie controller, we have this post mapping, and we are going to test this feature. We are going to write the integration test case for this post mapping, which is /movies, and we're going to test this against the MySQL database. Let's open this movie integration test. Let's create a method void. Let's call this should create movie test. We will add the annotation test, and inside this, first of all, we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. I will go to this movie controller test and copy this data or the movies object and paste it. And we don't need this ID. We don't want to initialize the ID because when we saved into the database, it is going to create the ID for us. Okay, so now we have created the movie object, which is avatar movie. Next, we're going to make use of the REST template, which we have initialized at the top, REST template. So let's make use of this REST template dot. It provides a method called post for object. Let's use post for object, and we're going to provide the URL that is we have set up at the top, which is base URL. So let's make use of this base URL, and we're going to pass the object which we want to save to the database, that is avatar movie, and we have to provide the entity name, which is entity type, that is movie.class. And once we make a request, once we make this post request using this REST template, it is going to return the movie object back. So let's call this movie, let's say it's new movie. And next we are going to make use of we are going to do the assertions. So let's make use of this assert not null. Assert not null, we're going to check this new movies should be not null. And also once we save it into the database, it is going to generate the ID for us. So let's verify whether do we have the ID or not. Assert that. For that we're going to use assert that new movie dot get ID is not null. It should not be null if it is stored into the database. So let's save this, and now let's go ahead and test this JUnit test case. So in order to test this, you can just select this and choose run as JUnit test. It should create the database tables for us, and also the test case should be passed. Let's verify that. You can see the test case, you can see the console logs, and also you can see this delete query as well, because after each and every JUnit test case, we are cleaning up the database. That is why you can see the delete query, and also you can see the green bar, the test case has been passed. So far the functionality for /movies post mapping is working as expected. But if you go to the database, you will not see anything, but you can see the table that has been created. So let's refresh this, and if you expand this, you can see the table that has been created. But if you select this query, you will not see anything, because after each and every JUnit test case, we are cleaning up the database. So that is what this after each will do. Okay, so let's recap one more time. That's what we have done. We have created the JUnit test case, that is should create movie test. We have added the test annotation. We have set up the data that are required for our test case, and we have make use of the REST template to make the HTTP post request to the URL, which is the base URL that we have set up, that is /movies, and we have passed the object that we have set up, which is avatar movie. And once we make the request, we will get the saved object, and using that we have verified the expected result is correct or not. We did the assert not null, and also we have verified the ID should not be null. Now let's go ahead and write the JUnit test case for reading the movies from the database. So let's create a JUnit test case, void should fetch movies test. Let's add the test annotation. Let me create some white space. Inside this, first we need to set up the data that are required for our test case. Let's go to this movie controller test and copy these two movies object and paste it. So let's get rid of this ID. Alright, now we have set up the data that are required for our test case. The second step is we have to test the unit that is being tested. So we have to make use of the REST template. It provides a method called get for object. We will provide the URL, that is base URL, and For this we don't have to pass any data, so it is going to return a list. So we can specify the response type, that is list.class, and it is going to return list of movie. Let's call this list. Let's import list. Let me remove this. The wrong import has been imported. So let's import the list from util package. And next, once we get the list, we can validate it. We can verify whether the expected result is correct or not. We can assert that, assert not null. We can do assert not null list, or instead of the not null, we can just directly check the size of it. So assert that list dot size, and we're going to call this is equal to, should be equal to 2. The list size should be equal to 2. So let's save this. Now let's go ahead and verify that. So I'm going to select this JUnit test case, right click, choose run as, and JUnit test. The test case should be passed and we should see the green bar. We are getting some exception, that is assertion field expected to, but it was 0. Alright, we made some mistake. Let's verify it. What we have done, we have created the movie object, the 2 movie object we have created, and we have we forgot to save the records into the database. We have just created the 2 objects, but we forgot to save it into the database. After saving it only, we are going to fetch the records into the database. At the time we will get the size of it too. So what I'll do is I'm going to just copy this and I'll paste it. Now we can pass the objects, that is Titanic movie, and save this. Now select the JUnit test case, choose run as JUnit test. This time it should pass the test case and we should see the green bar. Let's verify that. There you go, and it inserted the 2 records into the database, and it made the select query, and after that it deleted the records. So you can see we get the green bar and the test case has been passed. Now let's write a JUnit test case for reading the single movie object from the database. So I'm going to create a JUnit test case, void should fetch 1 movie test. Let's add the test annotation, and inside this we are going to set up the data that are required for our test case. So what I'll do is I'm going to copy these 2. Let's copy this and paste it, store this. Once we make the post request, we will get the new object. I'm going to store that in the same variable, the same avatar movie object, avatar movie. Similarly here, let's make this Titanic movie. So let's make it Titanic movie. So what we have done is we have set up the data, and also we have, after setting up the data, we are going to store it into the database, and we have made the post request using the REST template, and we are going to assign it to the same variables, that is avatar movie and Titanic movie. And next what we will do is we are going to make use of the REST template to call the get API for a single movie object For that we are going to use get for object and the URL, that is base URL, and for this we are going to concatenate the ID. So let's make use of this avatar movie ID, avatar movie.get ID. After saving into the database, we will get the ID of this object, that is avatar movie object. So for using that ID, we are making the get API call, and we have to specify the type, that is movie.class. This will gives us the existing movie object. So let's call this movie existing movie, and now we can validate whether the expected result is correct or not. So let's make use of this assert not null, and we can pass this existing movie. Similarly, assert equals, we can do assert equals, we can verify the movie name, that is avatar, and we can make use of this existing movie dot get name. So with this, save the file. Now let's select the JUnit test case, choose run as JUnit test. The test case should be passed and we should see the green bar. You can see the green bar, the test case has been passed. So what we have done is we have set up the data, we have stored into the database, and once we stored into the database, we will get the ID of it. So we have stored it in a variable, the same variable, and after that we have make use of the REST template to call the get API for a single movie object. And after that, once we get the movie object, we are going to validate it. We are going to verify whether the expected result is correct or not using assert not null and assert equals. Now let's go ahead and write a JUnit test case for deleting the movie. Void should delete movie test. Let's add the annotation test, and inside this, first we need to set up the data. So we'll do the same thing. So let's copy this data and paste it. Next, let's make use of the REST template dot delete. It provides a method called delete, and to this we are going to pass the URL. And if you look at this, this is going to return void. So after deleting this, it will not return anything. So base URL, and we need to provide the ID which we want to delete, slash the ID. We're going to make use of one of the object, that is avatar movie dot get ID. And after deleting this, so what we are doing is we are creating the two movie objects, we are storing the two movie objects into the database, and after deleting one of the movie object inside the database, there will be one record. We can verify the size which are present inside the database. So for that, let's make use of the movie repository dot find all, and we can get the size of it. I'm going to store that in a variable called count. Now we can verify this count. Assert equals, the expected is 1 and the actual is count. With this, save the file. Now select the JUnit test case, choose run as JUnit test. The test case should be passed. We should see the green bar. Let's verify that. You can see we get the green bar. Our test case is working as expected. The functionality is working as expected. Now let's write a JUnit test case for updating the movie. Void should update movie test. Let's add the test annotation, and inside this, first of all, let's set up the data that are required for our test case. What I'll do is I'm going to copy these two paste it, and next once we saved into the database, we are going to update the same object, which is avatar movie. So avatar movie dot set genre, we are going to update the genre. So let's say it's fantasy, and after this let's make use of this REST template dot put. It provides a method called put, so we will provide the base URL. And there is also one more way. So what we can do is we can provide the path variable /id, and the second parameter is the request body, or the object name which we are going to update. In our case it's avatar movie, and the third parameter is this path variable. So what we can do is avatar movie dot get id, which we are going to update, and once it updates, this put method is also going to return void. So once we update this, we can validate it. So let's make use of the REST template dot get for object. Let's provide the base URL slash avatar movie dot get id, and we can pass the object type, that is movie get for object. The second parameter is movie dot class. Oops, so let's change this to movie dot class. This will gives us the existing movie, so let's call this movie existing movie. Now we can assert this, assert not null existing movie, and we can verify this genre because we have updated the genre. So assert equals, the expected is fantasy, and expected actual is existing movie dot get genre. So with this, save the file. Now select the test case, choose run as JUnit test. The test case should be passed. We should see the green bar. Let's validate it. There you go. We get the green bar. The update functionality is working as expected. Alright, now let's go ahead and refactor this JUnit test cases. So if you look at these JUnit test cases, inside each and every JUnit test case, we are setting up the data. So what we can do is we can move this code to this before each annotation method. So before running each and every JUnit test case, we can set up the data for us. So what I'll do is I'm going to cut this entire thing, the data that we have set up, and I'm going to move it to this before each annotation method. And also we are not going to use the REST template dot post for object method to save the records into the database. Instead, we are going to make use of the movie repository, because here what we are doing is we are actually saving into the database using this REST template. We are directly saving the records into the database through the API, but what we are here trying to do is we are testing that APIs itself. So before testing the API, we are using the same approach to save the records into the database. So what will happen if there is a problem with our implementation? This would fail, right? So that's why we are not going to use this approach. Instead, we are going to use the repository, that is movie repository. So movie repository dot save, and we will save the records, that is avatar movie object. This will return the movie back. and similarly Titanic movie is equal to movie repository dot save, and we can save the records into the database. So now using this movie repository, we are saving the objects into the database. Let's save this, and now we can remove some of the duplicate code. So inside this should fetch one movie test method, I'm going to remove the code, and similarly in the delete also I'm going to get rid of the data in the update as well. I'll just remove this, and what we have to do is at the top let's create some fields: private movie avatar movie, similarly private movie Titanic movie. And now, so let's get rid of this, and looks like we are good. And if you look at this should create movie test, here we are actually making use of this test template because we have to test the entire feature, the save feature. So we have to make the request for the API /movies. That is why here we have used this. But while setting up the data, we should not use this approach, because we should not save the records into the database through the API, because if after all we are testing the entire feature, and if we use the same feature to save the records into the database to set up the data, what if we have what if we have something wrong with our implementation? That is not a good approach, right? So that is why we have used this movie repositories to save the records into the database. Now in this case we are damn sure about the movie repository. It is going to store the records into the database, and with this save the file. Now let's go ahead and run the JUnit test cases. All the test cases should be passed as before, and we should see the green bar as well. Let's verify that. You can see all the test cases has been passed, and all of the features is working as expected. But what we have done is we have refactored the code, and we have used the movie repository to save the records into the database. And for each and every JUnit test case, we are making the use of the REST template to test the endpoints, that is /movies or /movies/ the ID of a movie, and we are testing all the CRUD operations like create, update, delete, and read. So this is all about the integration testing. I hope you guys enjoyed this crash course. We have learned so far testing the repository layer, service layer, and controller layer, and also we have learned how to write the integration JUnit test cases. We have learned so far about the Mockito and the assertion methods, and also we have learned about the MockMvc. In case if you guys are enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash that like button, and also subscribe to the channel for future videos. In case if you are looking for the source code, the link will be given in the description section of this video for the source code. Go ahead and check out the repository which is available in the GitHub. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.